Chapter 44. Flat. About 6 weeks after I returned to my real life, everything changed. Dad moved out. My parents sat with me and Bex one evening and talked about how they both loved us very much indeed, but they didn't love each other as much as they used to. They said they were tired of arguing with each other, and it wasn't fair on us, and they were both sorry it had been going on for so long. They'd come to an agreement about money. Dad could afford to move into a little flat. He wasn't moving too far, and we still see him a lot. He said there might come a time where we'd have to sell the house, but if that ever happened, they'd promise we wouldn't go far and we could stay at the same school. Bex cried when they told us. Mum gave her a big hug, but she didn't say anything. I felt sad, but okay. I'd seen how happy Mum had been when I'd been erased, and even though I'd much rather she loved Dad again, I wanted to see her smile. And in this world, Dad had a job he loved, so I hoped that would be all right too. We saw Dad one evening during the week and every other weekend. At first he didn't seem to take it very well. His flat was tiny and smelled a bit, and he didn't really make any effort to keep it tidy. Also, when he dropped us home, he'd hug us for a really long time. It was like he didn't want to let us go. But after a few weeks, I noticed he bought some lamps for the flat and put some pictures on the wall. He also joined a squash league at the sports club, and apparently he was quite good at it. He said he'd take me and Bex one day and show us how to play. When he came to pick us up, he used to wait outside in the car, but last weekend, while I was still packing my bag, Mum invited him in, and I could hear him talking in the kitchen. I came down, and they were drinking coffee, and Mum was laughing about something Dad had said. I hadn't seen them like that since, well, I couldn't even remember. The fridge was now a sticky label-free zone, which suited me fine. Charlie Geek and I were mates again, although I never call him Charlie Geek anymore. I kept my word about that. I tried to be a really good friend. Sometimes he'll go off and ramble in class about something he knows loads about, and everyone will groan and moan about him being boring. Normally, I'd have elbowed him in the ribs and told him to stop being an idiot, but now I glare at everyone else and they eventually shut up. It took him a while to trust that I was being a true friend. I think he started to believe it when we had hockey in PE one day. Mrs. Allen began the lesson by teaching us how to dribble with the ball, but Charlie couldn't control it and he kept tripping up over his stick. We had to get into teams for a match, and it was down to me and Adele to pick the players. Charlie was, by far, the worst in the class, but I picked him first, which made everyone gasp, including him. He might have been a rubbish player, but there isn't anybody else I'd rather have on my side. One day, I'll tell him about what happened, maybe when we're old men, sitting on a bench drinking tea from a flask. Maybe then I'll tell him how he helped to bring me home. I still saw Reg every few days. He struggled with his memory more and more, and it took me a lot longer to explain who I was. On some days he just didn't understand who I was at all, so I left him alone then. I didn't want to upset him. When he was having a good day, I carefully asked about his old life, the one he'd left behind, although I never mentioned being erased. One day in the winter, we were sitting around his gas fire in the lounge, and he began to talk. I had a very peculiar dream last night, Maxwell, he said. It was about a young man who had lost someone he really deeply loved. I held on to my mug of hot chocolate as he spoke in his soft voice. Now this man, continued Reg, well, he found it very hard to live without this other person in his life. He thought everything was pretty pointless, and one day he just disappeared. Reg poofed his hand into the air. I stayed silent. But he hadn't disappeared completely. He was in the same surroundings, but nobody knew who he was. He got a chance to see this strange world, a world in which he had never been born, and he saw the differences he had made to his friends, his family's life, and he realised something. Reg's voice shook a little. What, Reg? I whispered. What did he realise? The man turned towards me, his brow creased with lines. He realised he wanted to go home, he said. He took a deep sigh and put his hot chocolate down on the table. Do you want to go home, Reg? I asked, putting my hand on his arm. He looked at me and his bottom lip trembled. I don't know, he said. I'm frightened. If Reg went back to his old life, he'd be returning to the worst moment ever. Emily would still be gone, but there would be people around him who loved him. There was Alice for a start, Emily's sister and Alice's husband, Jack. Reg had said how they'd been friends together. They were there, and he wouldn't be on his own any more. I put my drink down and faced him. Someone told me a while ago, Reg, that it didn't make much sense to me at the time, but I think it does now. It was about a brick. Reg stared at me. I tried to get what I wanted to say straight in my head. It was important that I got it right. I took a deep breath and began. This person told me that if you're going through a bad time in your life, it can sometimes feel like you're carrying a brick around in your pocket. Reg blinked as I carried on. Some days that brick will make feel so heavy in your pocket you can barely move. Every step takes so much effort it can all feel almost impossible to do anything. Reg nodded his head slowly. But some days, Reg, some days you will still have that brick in your pocket, but you won't even notice it. It'll always be there, but sometimes it won't feel as heavy. Does that make any sense? He didn't say anything, but his eyes looked watery. I watched him for a moment, then I dropped my head. I thought I'd said the right thing. About the story Dad had told me about the brick sounded silly when I said it out loud. I took a deep breath and looked up at him. Reg, I need you to concentrate as I tell you something. I'm going to tell you how to get home. How to get home to the people you love. Then, if you feel the time is right, you can go back to the exact moment you left. Do you understand? He nodded. Right, I said, sitting forward on my chair. You know the wooden egg in the cabinet, I said. And then I told him.